Hello, and welcome to the Autism Resources Kawartha podcast. I'm Matt Garrity, and I'm so happy to be here with you. We had an outpouring of support with our launch of episode 1. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. If you're coming back, thank you. In this episode, I sit down with Ashley. Ashley shares her personal journey of discovering her autism and ADHD, reflecting on the challenges faced throughout her life, particularly as a woman. Ashley discusses the impact of these neurodivergent conditions on her social interactions, parenting, and mental health. The conversation emphasizes the importance of understanding and compassion for neurodiversity, the struggles of navigating adult life, and the need for community support. The Autism Resources Kawartha podcast is a series of unscripted conversations with local autistic people and the people who love them right here in Kawartha Lakes. This broadcast is brought to you by Cardinal Home Services. Thank you so much for your support. Be sure to check them out at cardinalhome.ca. Now, finally, enjoy this conversation with Ashley.
So what is your experience with autism?
So my brother is autistic, and after I had my son, I went through a pretty, I would say severe, postpartum depression, which then led to ADHD diagnosis and started suspecting that I may be an autistic woman myself. So started going through the neurological assessment process, not completed yet, but I do believe that I'm autistic as well. So kind of relating to all the late diagnosed women talking about autism these days and how that experience can be a little bit different, and sort of just discovering it within myself right now at 37, which has been a wild experience.
How has it been in a wild experience?
It seems to explain a lot. So a lot of things from my childhood and stuff that I always struggled with. And then you're like, oh, well, that makes sense. Well, that makes sense. Well, that makes sense. And you kind of start reviewing your life a little bit. So it's been a little bit frustrating, but also very validating, and just feeling like I'm getting to know myself a lot better and how to support myself better.
When you look back on it, what were those things that made sense, you clearly look back on and recognize?
I think from a young age, I had a lot of social difficulties in school, especially in public school, and especially in groups. So usually did okay with I would have a friend here and a friend there, but in a friend group, I would really struggle, or in a classroom, I always just felt like I never quite fit in, or it almost felt like everyone sort of naturally knew what to do, whereas I was always trying to figure that out and make myself fit in, as opposed to just being in the moment as a kid, I guess. Or a lot of things at high school and college, I really relied on what I saw in movies or TV and thought that was what it would be like, and then tried to mimic other people. So learning that's called masking. And just learning. Yeah, I always struggled. The social one was a big one. And then a lot of anxiety over certain things, a lot of sensory differences. So sort of being told you're dramatic for certain things, and then realizing that wasn't true. Actually, you're just having a different sensory experience. The sensory part has been really helpful, because that's something you can control in your environment and sort of set up supports for yourself. And then just also for my own self-esteem and sort of rewiring how I think of myself or talk about myself too, as an adult now. So I would say those are the three main areas that I found sort of learning about autism very helpful.
When did you think you started to connect the dots for yourself then?
Well, it was, I think, when I started researching ADHD. So when I went...
I'm sorry to interrupt so quickly, but...
That's okay.
Was it right after you gave birth, or was it before you were already...
So I was definitely struggling a bit in pregnancy too. Okay. But I would say it really started about 6 months after. I think in the first stage, your hormones are kind of wild and helping you, and you're just in survival mode anyways. Yeah. And then when it started getting closer to thinking about returning to work and things like that, and I just started struggling a lot more mentally. And then when I started going through researching ADHD, because that was sort of what the doctors were initially indicating was present, and realizing that if you have ADHD, you're much more likely to have autism as well as a co-occurring condition, and then also having a family history of it. And then looking up all the things about ADHD, and it explained a lot, but it didn't quite explain everything. And then I went really like deep dive into learning about autism and things like that. And the one thing, you know, that kept coming up is like, usually people that don't have autism don't like get obsessed with learning everything there is to know about autism and, you know, going down that rabbit hole. So just sort of validating myself in that way.
Hey, it's Matt Garrity from the Autism Resources Kawartha podcast. I want to tell you about one of my family's favorite things to do in Kawartha Lakes, the Crazy Creative program at the Kawartha Art Gallery. It's totally free, open to all ages, and every Saturday the gallery turns into a space where you can express your imagination with model magic. I've taken my kids countless times, and we always walk away with big smiles. I've also talked to artists on this podcast who are autistic, and I love how a program like Crazy Creative makes creativity accessible for everyone. Join in any Saturday from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. at the Kawartha Art Gallery. You can find out more by following them on social media or visiting kawarthagallery.com. You'll love it.
Yeah, I just learned a term this morning from a woman named Natalie who talked about, was it ADHD?
Yes, ADHD. Yes,
Yeah.
That's the term.
And like, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert at autism. I like to just like, I have this lived experiences, and my son was diagnosed a couple years ago, and I'm curious and trying to learn this world and bring awareness to it. So when she said that the first couple times, I was like, I have no idea what she's talking about. But now I'm like, okay, this is cool. And like connecting the dots.
And I think a lot of people that are late diagnosed are what would be called ADHD, are both, because it does sort of muddy the waters in the diagnosis process because you don't clearly look like one or the other. And in one trait, your ADHD side could be sort of dominant, and in another trait, your autistic side could be dominant, and they can fight with each other and they can mask each other. And it makes it a lot more difficult to sort of unravel what's going on. So I find it very hard to find like a sensory sweet spot to be comfortable, or like, because you'll be both, you know, sometimes I'm very talkative and very social, and sometimes I'll shut down and go nonverbal. Like it can be a bit of a battle. And your capacity can vary quite a bit, especially as a woman. One thing I learned too is how much hormones impact symptoms. And so that's another problem with diagnosis, is because one week to week, day to day, hour to hour, your capacity or the way you're experiencing your symptoms can change pretty drastically.
Wow.
And so it's like, well, I seen you being super productive and super chatty and this on Wednesday, so why can't you do it today? And so that, I think for a lot of ADHD people, there's also struggles of like maybe not being believed or feeling misunderstood. And it's that variance in capacity and variance in how your traits show up. The other part that made me really suspicious about the autism piece is when I was medicated for ADHD. One thing a lot of people will report happening is then your autistic traits are like, hey, I'm going to be in charge now.
Yeah.
And you kind of have a really different reaction to the medication, not like, and it goes a little differently. And so that was sort of like the nail in the coffin for me, where I'm like, yep, I think this is exactly what's going on here.
So it's almost like two different personality traits that are fighting each other?
They
Are
fight.
they fighting?
The conditions fight. Like you might think like they'd cancel each other out, or you'd end up in kind of a happy medium, but you do not. It's they battle each other, and sort of like when people describe, you know, autism instead of a spectrum as like dials on a stove, right? Because you can be hyperverbal or you could be nonverbal. You could be hypersensitive or you could be not sensitive at all. So each stove, you know, each trait has its own dial. And then your ADHD traits have their own dial, and they can be set in opposite directions. And it's kind of like a tug of war, if that makes sense. It's a little bit hard to explain, but it can be uncomfortable.
Are you aware of it while it's happening?
Yes. Yeah. So like one thing that would be common would be like my ADHD impulsivity and need for connection and like loving people and wanting to go out, will impulsively agree to a bunch of plans, sign myself up for a bunch of stuff. And then the day will come and my autistic side is like, I need to go home and it's too loud in here and I am having crippling social anxiety. And why did I do this? to myself. And so that's like probably the easiest way to explain like the differences. Is a lot of times I find my ADHD is like quick to write checks that my autism can't cash kind of thing. Yeah.
That sounds exhausting.
It can be exhausting, yeah. And exhaustion, especially for neurodivergent women, is something that you would see as a very common, like, obviously exhaustion is not enough to diagnose anything, but it would be a pretty universal experience, like chronically just being exhausted.
Mm-hmm. So how would you best describe what it's like to have ADHD? Mm-hmm. And then I'm also going to ask afterwards, so maybe this will help your answer, but how would you best describe having autism? Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to kind of want to curious, like, now to better understand how they clash.
Yeah.
So how would you best describe what it's like to have ADHD?
For my ADHD, like my experience is I need a lot of novelty. Like I need to be interested in something to be motivated. If I'm not interested, it's very hard. Like if I don't have a passion for it, it's very hard to get myself motivated to do things. Mm-hmm. Or I can be, quick to jump around from different ideas. So like your brain's like going a million miles, a second. Mm-hmm. So lots of racing thoughts, lots of, for me, impulse control has always been an issue, or even not really having much of a filter before I speak, again, with the impulse control. Things like interrupting can be challenging, but also some really great sides like creativity is a really common ADHD trait, being able to sort of think outside the box. And with ADHD, people with ADHD typically benefit from having a lot of structure and routine, but also will fight against that structure and routine because it becomes boring. Mm-hmm. So my ADHD brain's like constantly seeking novelty or stimulation, like constantly needing more. And then the autistic side, very quick to become overstimulated. So that's with the two of them. It's like finding that balance of just enough stimulation, but not too much that I'm going to become overwhelmed. So you're prone to burn out with the autism too. So my autistic side, one thing I've always really struggled with is change. Like since childhood, I don't deal with change well. Usually for my day, I kind of had a plan in my head for how things are going to go. And I sometimes struggle to adapt when there's changes, or if I have to move or go somewhere new or something like that, that can be really hard. Whereas my ADHD side would like thrive from that, right? So that's kind of a battle. And the social capacity, sometimes having a lot of some social capacity and sometimes needing like a significant amount of alone time to decompress.
So is it fair to say, from my assessment of that, the ADHD part of your brain wants stimulation and
yes.
like desperately
sensory seeking, yes.
And once you've got it and satisfied that part of the brain, the autistic part of the brain's like, oh, hell no.
Yeah, that happens a lot. Yes, that happens a lot. That happens a lot. So like exercise for me has been like one of my main coping things because that gives me my like physical stimulation and mental stimulation. And my autistic side loves it because it also comes with routine, and you can have like the same plan where you're doing like the same workout, repetitively. Because my autistic side likes repetition. It likes things the same. Like I'll get one meal. If I like it, we're eating that every day, my safe food kind of thing. Yeah. So there is things you can do, I find, like to find what works for you, but it sometimes takes a little more work.
Were you always drawn to working out?
Oh yeah, like I'll go cuckoo if I have to sit all day. Like really? I can't do it. No, I can't sit still. That's totally the ADHD thing, and my mind also will not shut off either. So I have combined, so both mentally hyperactive and physically hyperactive. So I need a lot of activity. And the autistic side, it benefits a lot from the physical activity too. But it's more the mental side that seems to be the battle for me.
How so?
I think with like rumination. So like things like, let's say for example, ADHD, you would have like emotional dysregulation and hyperactivity. So like that doesn't always mix well.
Yeah.
Or that impulse control issues, combined with like my autistic side, which can be very blunt and direct. You can get into situations where you come across as rude, or you have certain social struggles, or I find it hard to feel like connected to other people. Like I have friends and great family, but struggle to feel actually understood and seen. Like I feel lonely a lot because I feel like it's hard to find people that relate to actually what you're going through.
Sure.
And especially when you're not diagnosed or you grew up undiagnosed, people are very quick to give you advice. Well, you just need to do this. Well, you just need that. And you just don't listen and you just don't get it. And you're just bossy or you're just this or you're just that. And I find all that noise very, very frustrating. It's just very hard to feel like people get it, I guess.
It's heartbreaking. And I'm fresh in this because I've had a couple conversations with people in the last week about this. And it feels like an attack in anything that you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And you're always being told, whether intentionally, aggressively, or like in a micro way, that you're doing something wrong.
That your personality is wrong. And that's why we mask. Like, you know, as a kid in class, I was always being told I was annoying. But I was a very talkative child, very outgoing child. Yeah. And then at one point, I just stopped talking. I became very quiet. And people would then say, you're oddly quiet. Why are you so quiet? Like, because when I used to talk, the feedback I was getting from kids my age was that I was super annoying. You know, or you bond with people differently. So like autistic people like to bond typically over a shared interest. You know, so it can be easier when you have structure or you're playing sports or something like that, where you're bonding over whatever sport it is or whatever you're interested in, whether it's, you know, a video game or something like that, can be a lot easier for neurodivergent people to connect that way. But when you're trying to just sort of sit in a classroom, it can be hard.
I'm bouncing all over the place and I apologize.
How ADHD of you. That's okay.
So I want to go back to the working out part.
Yeah.
So do you like working out do you like playing sports, like with teams, or
I like it
like individual sports?
Yeah.
Or you like working out?
I like it all. So as a kid, I always played sports, and I do think that kind of helped me a lot socially because you kind of have built-in teammates, right? So it gives you that social connection. Whereas even when, you know, like in high school, like I was not invited to the parties. I was not, you know, I had friends, but they were school friends that you would see, and then you didn't have a lot of socializing outside of that. But I was on the sports team and I would get to go to the away games and be on the bus with other kids. And so I didn't notice as much when I was playing sports what I was missing socially until the sports kind of ended, and then it's on you to build those connections as an adult. Or like in public school when I wasn't involved as much as in organized sports, you really notice the social struggles more then. So now I typically work out by myself or with group fitness classes or something like that. And I find it very, like, extremely helpful, especially because you think of if you walk into a gym, like, you can be social if you want to, but it's not like a social expectation on you. There's no demand to be talkative. So if you don't have the capacity that day, headphones on, you know, you can stim with your favorite song on repeat and no one's going to judge you and blast it right into your eardrums if that feels good. You can get the proprioceptive input, which is really helpful. A lot of neurodivergent people tend to be a little bit clumsy and have issues with knowing sort of where their body is in space. And physical activity and weightlifting helps with that a lot. So I've always been extremely clumsy, and something I've noticed improve since I've been just like weightlifting, that's helped a lot. It can help if you're, you know, stuck ruminating on a thought loop to get those emotions out, like a physical expression. I hand flapped like as a kid, like this kind of thing. And that's something as I grew up and I mask it, I'll even still find myself like catching, you know, my hands. But
still now.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm so high masking that I haven't like let that go yet. But I do find when I get upset or when I'm struggling with overwhelm, there is a need like for some kind of physical expression of that. So, you know, like sometimes when autistic people have a meltdown, they hit themselves, you know, because it's like that thing you need to get out. I do that. It's embarrassing. I'm wearing a shirt like this because I have a bruise on my chest right now from freaking out and kind of like hitting. But I find my meltdowns and that need of like that physical release, sometimes the really heavy work of weightlifting, or for kids, it could be like pushing against a wall as hard as you can, or, you know, redirecting to hit a pillow or something like that can be extremely helpful.
Another question I was going to ask you, but now like just conversationally going to pivot. if you don't mind me continuing to ask, like down this path, like, should I stop my son from trying to hit himself?
Well, I'm not an expert,
Yeah.
but everything I've read would be like you would try to redirect.
Okay.
But again, like, it's not bad. He needs to get that out. But obviously we don't want anyone hurting themselves or hurting others, right? So, well, everything I've seen is like, if you can get him like a pillow or something that works for him, and it may take some trial and error to find out what that is.
Yeah.
To find a healthier way to do that. But again, I grew up without a diagnosis, so I don't know how different it would be if I had one and had some support and learned those skills as a child, and maybe I wouldn't need to do that. That's actually the first time I've ever admitted that I do like hit myself during meltdowns, because it's embarrassing.
Thank you for sharing that with me.
But it's a common thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very common thing, and it's not something I can control necessarily, and I never learned how to do that.
Yeah. I think people within like the neurodivergent world understand that.
Yes, I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope your podcast listeners will get it. Yeah.
Yeah. I've had a bit of a shift in my mindset in the last couple hours of so much of my focus on autism in the last couple of years since I learned about it with my son's diagnosis was, how do we help people with autism and the people that are caring for them?
Mm-hmm.
But why are we not focusing more on just everybody else?
Yes.
And creating that awareness for the neurotypical people and telling them more about these things.
And just understanding, right? Like, no one should have to walk around with like their diagnosis on a necklace for you to just have a little compassion that not everyone processes the world the same as you. Like, there's all kinds of invisible disabilities that people have. Or even if you don't have a disability, you don't know, maybe someone's parent is dying at home and that's why they're gone nonverbal and they're being what is coming across to you as rude. But you're going to take that personally and make all kinds of judgments on them. Well, they didn't talk to me. They must not like me, blah, blah, blah. And like, even in the workplace, like I remember getting job evaluations that were literally like, you don't smile a lot, so it doesn't seem like you're happy to be here. And you don't engage in, like small talk or whatever, but that's not natural for me to do. And I can't help that all the time, So I think just giving people a little grace and understanding that, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. Just like neurotypical people have different personalities and skill levels and interests. And, some of them might be kind and some of them might be rude. The same thing is true for neurodivergent people. There's diversity within all of us, and neurodiversity is a normal variance in our brain, We're not all supposed to think the same and look at the world the same. And just maybe understanding, I wish more people understood that, and just that we could give each other a little bit more grace.
Yeah. You speak so passionately about this.
I am passionate about it. Yes, I am.
And like, in a way, I want to validate you as a child.
Yes.
And like, yes, you had a lot to say.
Yeah.
Now you're an adult and you can do something really special with that.
Totally. And that's like, if I could speak to anyone as an adult that's going to go through the diagnosis process, I was completely unprepared for what happens next.
Yeah.
So you get diagnosed. The diagnosis process is very intense. If you go the actual neurological assessment route, like, you need to go in prepared that you're going to relive your childhood from day one all the way through to adulthood, every trauma you've ever had. And it like forces you to look back at your life through the eyes of an adult.
Yeah.
Of course, I did it right after I had my son. So now looking back as a mother myself, at myself as a kid, and seeing all these struggles that I had, that I always blamed myself for, that I thought I was weird, or I thought I just wasn't as disciplined as other people. Like, why can other people manage this and I can't? I must be lazy. And I was in full burnout when I got diagnosed, which is unfortunately the case for a lot of women. Women shouldn't have to have their lives in shambles just to be able to get a diagnosis and get some support. But unfortunately, that's usually what happens. And my experience was like, the closest people to me still, a lot of them don't believe me, or were calling me lazy or a liar, or you just need to work harder, or you just don't get it. Like, you're not going to be supported necessarily in the way you think, especially because people that aren't willing to face their own neurodivergence are not going to be ready to embrace yours. We know it runs in families. We know neurodivergent people tend to sort of flock together naturally because you communicate the same way. And sometimes when you're getting diagnosed, you can be a mirror for other people for things they're not ready to see. And that can reflect back to you as a lot of rejection or dismissal. And it can be hard. And there's definitely a period of anger and grief that you're going to go through after getting diagnosed. So I'm very passionate about it because I do feel like for a while I felt like I was literally 14 again, like standing up for all the things I couldn't say at the time. And I was mad at everybody. It was coming out in really unpleasant ways. And that's the other thing too. Like when you're emotionally dysregulated, you are hard to be around. People don't want to talk to you if you're yelling and screaming and crying all the time. But it felt like no one like responded with curiosity, and it felt like everyone responded with judgment.
Was that family more, friends, or just
family, friends? Like I think people don't understand, and especially, to be fair, I'm so high masking that how would they understand? Because I've been hiding my whole life too. Like I didn't tell them what I was experiencing. I just hid it. You know, if I have a meltdown, I do that alone. Like no one sees that, you know? And so I think there's two sides to it. One, you've hidden your struggles so well, and now you're saying I'm struggling, and it's like, well, no one believes you, but you've never showed them you struggling before. So it's very confusing for everyone.
It's the invisible disability, right?
It is. And even people that are very well-intentioned and trying to help, often I would feel misunderstood by the advice they were giving me, would tell me they didn't understand. So they were trying to be helpful, but the things they were telling me instantly told me that you have no concept of what I'm going through at all. And then I felt even more alone. So it's not necessarily that people are trying to be mean or trying to be dismissive, but I think it's a struggle for people to understand, particularly with high masking adults. And it's like, well, you got through college. Yeah, but I had several false starts and had panic attack every week. And, you know, like, or a meltdown now, I know what it's called, you know, and I was drinking like a fish to mask my social anxiety, you know, and all kinds of different things that you do to get through it, right?
And just because you were successful in something doesn't mean that you don't have these challenges.
Exactly. And that goes back to that like dials on the stove analogy. Someone could be very gifted in one area, right? That's common. And then need a lot of support in a different area. And I think a lot of people see like the Big Bang Theory, like Sheldon Cooper, and think that's what autism is. And they have a very narrow scope in their mind of what it is. And the reality is it's much more diverse than that.
It's all kinds of, there's a massive spectrum. And that's why I'm always fascinated in everyone's different experiences. And that's why I was asking about the sport specifically, because my son wants to be a part of sports. He enjoys the element of it and maybe some of my interests in it. And just the idea of probably being a part of something and the social aspect and all that. But he hates competition. And he's not very athletic physically. So I think that frustrates him, and the sweating and exerting himself.
The sweating.
Like the social side of things, the pace of it. So he hates sports. That's why I was interested in that. It's cool that you were into weightlifting. And, not weightlifting, but like the gym and working out and everything. I was curious if that was sports related too. But
I would say the sweating thing, like I am very careful about what I will wear to the gym and what I won't wear, because that's an issue. Or even things like I did figure skating as a kid, and a lot of girls now do hockey and stuff. And I'm like, I don't think I could wear that mask on my face. You know, like there are things where it might take some trial and error to find what actually he enjoys and what it's going to look like. But I would say encouraging physical activity in whatever he likes. Embrace that. And also, like, we always talk about women getting missed, but I think a lot of like, I'm obsessed with the show Shoresy. It's like my it's like my show that I'm just rewatching. It's just like my comfort show right now, which is also a common neurodivergent thing, right? And like, you will never convince me that Shoresy is not an ADHD character. Like, he to me is like the postcard of what someone with autism and ADHD looks like. But for men, hockey would be an acceptable interest, right?
Sure.
So if someone's obsessed with hockey and they live, sleep, breathe it, well, is that different than someone that's obsessed with trains and lives, sleeps, breathes it? It's just a different interest, but it's the same manifestation of what it is, right? And so I the way he talks, like the monotone of his voice, the way he has that like that single focus on hockey, the way just everything about the way his character like talks and understands the world and moves just makes me feel like this is a character I relate to. Like the way he's experiencing the world like relates to me. And I think characters like that are so important because again, it's just expanding that look of like what it could be.
Mm-hmm. How do you think I should encourage my son to get more into sports? And not that it's from like a masculine perspective, like you gotta do sports, but I just want to see him being a little bit more physical, if that's fair.
Yeah.
Or encouraging that, or just based on a conversation. How would I better encourage that?
Well, I guess for me, I would probably observe first and see if he sort of seems inclined to certain things and encourage whatever that might be. Mm-hmm. I mean, for a lot of autistic people, a big part of the challenge is trying something new is very hard, very scary.
Sure.
Same with ADHD, the transitions to new people, places, things can be difficult. So I think as much as you can like talk through with him, what do you feel about this sport? And like step by step, here's where we'll be playing. This is what the equipment you would be wearing would be. It's these days at these times. Here's how you would be interacting with the other kids. Here, like really explaining and breaking down step by step what's going to be happening and see how he feels about that for different activities. And then maybe you could then go to one. So what sounds more comfortable to you? And how about we try this together and I'll take you there and show you where to go and step by step. Like I think really holding their hand throughout the process and having these conversations and seeing what sparks something in him. Oh, that sounds like it might be fun. And then blowing up whatever that interest is. And it could start from maybe you watch different sports together and see which ones he seems to like more.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's hard. And physical activity doesn't have to look like sports, you know. It could be dancing, it could be anything, right? Like whatever lights him up, I would say.
I'd like to see him more active.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way.
Walking. If he likes to go in nature, like you know. And for neurodivergent people, interest is key to motivation. So and also like finding a way to make it fun or making it a game. So maybe if a walk is too boring, but he's super into like birds, then maybe you can read and see how many different birds you can identify and make it a game for him somehow. Like that kind of motivation, I think you get a lot more with. Or I worked for a personal trainer as a personal trainer for a little while and went to a conference, and that was a big thing with working with neurodivergent clients is trying to find a way to make it fun. So like if you're sprinting, you're not sprinting there and back. It's like, okay, pretend there's a monster behind you and you have to get to the end before the monster gets you, and turn it into fun and something that is going to be an opportunity for connection, and less about, you know, like you said, the masculine, you have to play sports. And I think letting it be his idea, you know, if you can.
Yes.
Because that's the other thing. Like autistic people like to be in control. Like I want stimulation, I want socializing, I want all these things, but I need to be in control of how that looks to be comfortable.
Yeah. And for me, it's thinking about more ways to connect with him.
Yes. Yeah.
And have him and I talk about like having special bonding time. And my other son, who's younger, neurotypical, but getting tested for ADHD this fall. Yeah. We've been treating him like he's got ADHD for the last year. Things have been a bit better. Anyway, so like he's very active. Our connection, whenever him and I have time to play together, it's like we've got like go hit some golf balls in our backyard. Yeah. Soccer, golf, basketball, like whatever. And I'm thinking about that a lot lately as I'm trying to make sure I'm giving equal time to the other one. Yeah. And he's not into sports. That's fine.
Is it like water, like swimming?
Yes. Yeah. So, and it's something I'm dealing with, but then finding ways, like I said, to connect with him. So him and I go get wings every couple weeks because he loves chicken wings,
Yes.
right? So like him and I, like I want him to start a wing blog or whatever,
I
right?
love that.
But it's always food related, our bonding.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find something else.
Or maybe one day I don't know how far you are from the wing place, but maybe you walk to get your wings.
It's a great idea. Yeah. And he loves reading.
Okay.
Obsessed with reading.
Yeah.
I sadly just got into reading, if that's a weird thing to say. So the other week we had time, like him and I, to spend time together. We just laid there and read together, his book and my book. And it's just, I'm still trying to get over and like think about like, is this bonding? How is this connecting? Does this feel the same to him as when I'm going and playing out with his brother? Does those connections feel the same? Is he feeling that love for me and connection?
I would say absolutely yes. Like if he loves reading and you're willing to lay down and read beside him and share his interest and ask him questions about his book, that's probably so special to him. And I think, again, whenever you can, just responding with curiosity.
Sure.
Ask him about his special interest. Like there's nothing a neurodivergent person loves than the safety to just info dump about whatever it is they love.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, so I think spending that time and listening to him when my brother was always Pokemon. Like if you brought up Pokemon near him, you were going to get treated to a monologue for about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
You weren't even necessary for the conversation, about everything to do with Pokemon.
Yeah.
But ask him to go learn about something he's not interested in. It's not happening.
No chance.
He has the absolute brain power to like memorize, super smart, super intelligent, super able to verbalize, but that interest had to be there for him. And he got to be in control of that. So I think as much as you can support whatever it is that lights your son up, I think you're doing a great job.
Yeah. Pokemon's one.
Yeah.
Minecraft.
So maybe Pokemon Go for activity.
He does love that.
That's activity. That's
and
walking.
Like we're still always juggling, and you can probably appreciate this as a parent of we don't want him on electronics or screens, but then you talk to any doctor within like the neurodivergent community or area, and they're like, it's totally fine. It's different. You have to break that thought.
Yeah.
So
that screens are bad. They're not. If it's regulating him, 100%. He's learning something you can talk about. It's not a horror, and you know what's best for your child at the end of the day. Like, your child better than anyone. Mm-hmm. So I think if you see them happy and thriving and being well adjusted, then you're probably on the right track. I think as parents, we're so hard on ourselves.
Sure.
Like so hard on ourselves. But if you're worried about that, you're probably doing a good job.
Thank you. That's what I say all the time. Yes. I'm like, I don't think bad parents think or wonder
they're not
if they're
up at night absolutely stressed that they're doing a good job.
That's what I say to my wife Meg all the time when like we've had a rough parenting day.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, are we doing this and that right? I'm like, I think we're on the right path because I think good parents are thinking about that.
Totally. And no one's posting their rough parenting day on Instagram, right? Like as much as we want to limit screen time for kids, I think sometimes our own screen time and our own social media and like comparing ourselves can make us feel crappy as parents too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not to categorize or compartmentalize your life because I met you 30 minutes ago.
Yes.
But in my mind, there's almost like 3 phases that you've been through. A child.
Yep.
I don't want to be too dramatic, but where you were told you were doing stuff wrong all the time.
Yes, yeah.
The second phase, you've now gone through school, you've done all the sports, and you're on your own, and you're lonely, and you don't have direction. And then the phase that you're maybe in now where you're the mom and you're starting to not figure stuff out, but like piece a lot together.
Yes.
What's been the most challenging phase?
Absolutely after having my son. Because it feels like every sort of workaround or coping strategy, I guess, that I had come up with to just deal with what I was experiencing stopped working all at once. And then, the challenge of you want to be a good parent, but you're also processing your own issues from childhood and stuff and struggling to regulate yourself while teaching another human to regulate themselves. That's hard. And then the people pleasing was a huge thing that I guess became aware of, the degree to which I was people pleasing other people, which is of course a form of self-abandonment and, disrespect to ourselves. And then I think a lot of people don't talk about like the stage of, you're going to be angry, And you're also going to feel just disgusted, like disgusted with the treatment you tolerated, disgusted that you needed support and were denied it, or no one saw it, or you weren't seen and you weren't heard, and you feel like you were left behind, and just disgusted with maybe the way you allowed other people to treat you or some of the decisions that you made. Like there's a lot of shame and regret over those things. And at the same time, living behind the mask or the masking in your mind keeps you safe.
Mm-hmm.
And so like when I was in postpartum and sick after having my son, I lost my ability to mask completely. And so I felt extremely vulnerable and exposed because just things like needing to stim or pacing or not being able to control what was coming out of my mouth at all. Like I had no impulse control for my speaking. I was just speaking all the time, or I knew that I was going to have trouble managing my emotions, which created a lot of anxiety going places. Whereas before I felt like I had this safety blanket of like, I can hide kind of behind this masking. And then it is very confusing because you have changed when you go through this and you start unmasking, you are different. And how is everyone in your life going to respond to you suddenly being not quite the same as you were before? And there's a lot of fears around that. And for me, like when I went through burnout, I also, like, my relationship fell apart at the same time. So I found myself unable to work with a 1-year-old. And staring down, how am I going to financially support him? Am I ever going to feel normal again? I had a huge skill regression, which a lot of people don't realize is a real thing. And I didn't know which skills were going to come back and which skills weren't. So just the uncertainty, I think, and it's like, you feel like you have a certain control over your life, even though none of us really do. And it feels like that safety blanket's ripped away at the same time as you're now responsible for an entire other human being and making sure their life is as good as possible. It's been very overwhelming. And I think the healing process from that was a lot longer and slower than what I expected it to be. And at the same time, just feeling judged, or feeling like people have preconceived notions of you or their opinions on you without knowing your real story is hard. And of course, like, another neurodivergent thing is our rejection sensitivity, which I know I have. So even if people aren't being judgmental, like, my natural thought process kind of thinks the worst, or I can interpret things that way, or I can interpret things as rejection that are maybe neutral, or even just respond to rejection much more emotionally than what you might expect. And so just wrapping all of that up and trying to find a way to, like, move forward and sort of hold your head high and finally, like, just accept that I am who I am, and it's okay if people don't understand. It's just, that's been the hardest thing. I always went through challenges, and, like, the childhood thing was okay. Like, there was bullying at school, but I had an amazing babysitter that I went to through my whole life. And so there was, like, that amazing support and the other kids that went there. So I had certain protections of that. And my family was, a good family, and, like, having brothers and stuff. But even when things were hard in school sometimes, or hard, I had some kinds of support. It's not like I was completely on my own, whereas I just felt like as an adult, everything just fell apart on my head. You can't go to mom and dad the same way you can as when you're, 14 and things are hard.
Yeah. You're an adult now and you're aware of this stuff.
You're an adult, but you feel like a child. Like, I felt like a helpless child for a long time.
You're super vulnerable because now you've become aware of all of this.
Yes.
You're a kid and you're a kid, and then you're done sports in your 20s or whatever, and everything's kind of confusing still. Yeah. But now you're an adult, you're supposed to be a certain way.
Yep. And for a lot of women, when you'll find with the ADHD and the autism is puberty is a big time because the hormonal changes can wreak havoc. So that would be that might be the first time parents, if they've been missed, might be like, something's not quite, like, this is extreme. Especially for women with ADHD and autism, you're much more likely to have PMDD, so really hard time around your period, like for 2 weeks. Like, I always think my life is over. Like, literally, like, it's like half the month. You're not emotionally yourself. Or the other time is when kids go from the transition from high school to university can be very hard because often in high school there is built-in structure. Like you have your sports team, you have your class schedule, you have built-in friend group at school. You go home to mom and dad who take care of the cooking and the cleaning. Now all of a sudden you're living on yourself by yourself. You don't know anyone. You have all these additional uncertainties and responsibilities. So that's a really common time for things to sort of start falling apart, especially if you're unaware that you're neurodivergent, because you would have no ability to plan and put supports in place, right? So super common for people to have like a lot of false starts at college and university, which was definitely the experience for me. And then again, when you leave university and college, it's another big transition again, where that structure from university and college is now gone. People are always going in a million different directions. Your friends might move across the country. You're not living at home anymore, or maybe you've moved cities again. And so any of those big like transition times. And then for women, if you sort of survive and stumble your way through all that, if pregnancy doesn't get you, menopause and perimenopause will. And that's the other big time, which is also like horrific for women that have built these big responsible lives, and their masking has made them maybe very successful at these highly responsible, highly organized jobs. And then hormones change, skill levels change, their ability to cope changes. And now you can barely keep it together at this huge responsible life you've built for yourself. And how do you handle that at 40, you know? So
Are you scared of that?
No, because I think it hit me with the baby thing. Okay. I feel like I'm good now. I think because women can go into perimenopause early too. So I'm 37. So I think I'm close enough that probably was part of it as well. So it's those are sort of the big times that, from what I mean, my knowledge just comes from talking to other neurodivergent people about their lived experience. And that seems to be what the common thread is.
Where have you met those people?
All online, because I was having a really hard time finding anyone that understood what I was going through in real life, or that I was comfortable really sharing the full details with. So I started looking online, and there was a lot of women that were telling stories very similar to mine. Their experiences seemed almost identical to mine. And that's where I started like learning about these things and like, oh, it's not just me going through this. And there was a lot of women. And part of the reason I'm so passionate about it is because it is like a clear pattern. When you start talking to people, it seems like it follows this clear direction of how it's going to go. And people kind of end up with the same kind of trauma and the same kind of unhealthy coping mechanisms. And they all commonly describe feeling a profound sense of loneliness and disconnection, even if there's people around you, because you just don't feel seen or understood by anyone. And so that's where I found people. And then I found as I opened up a bit about my story, more people would sort of privately message, and then you could have a conversation back and forth. So that's where I found most of it, because the research is getting better, but most research on autism and ADHD has been done on boys. So, you know, if you hear people saying things like, oh, well, be careful, like a lot of the information on social media is not true, for example, I would challenge, like, are you qualified to say that? Because is there even research that exists on autism in women and girls? Not really. There's a little bit. There's becoming more. But you're going to say that the lived experience of these millions of women is not valid because the study hasn't been done yet? I don't believe that, you know? I think obviously anything on social media, you need to look more into it and do your due diligence, but I found it a very helpful resource.
So was it, I'm curious because it'll be helpful. I'm just thinking of people that might be listening to this of like, was it going on social media and saying like, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. Is anybody else dealing with it? Or are there groups that you found? Or are there paid groups that you find? So
I kind of started searching like on TikTok or Instagram. I would just search like ADHD or autism, and I think maybe, of course, how the algorithm is a powerful thing. So I think it started by like I watched maybe one video that really spoke to me, and I watched it a couple of times and in entirety, and then all of a sudden my feed was flooded with that kind of content. So I didn't have to search too hard for it, but I just kind of looked that way. So I'm sure it exists, but I haven't found any like actual groups or anything that I've joined. And then I created my own page where I just post about, you know, my own experience, and it kind of connected with people that way.
That's awesome. And talk about your page. Because you sell some stuff too, right?
Yeah. So my page is Ash Webster ADHD. So when I was in burnout and not able to work at the time, I was a little afraid because I'm like, am I ever going to be able to have a job again? Like I really didn't know. So I started designing notebooks. So I sell, the one I'm most proud of is my mental health support notebook. So obviously there's differences in communication with neurodivergent people, especially under stress. I do not have a family doctor or real access to care still to this day. And I didn't after I had my son. So I ended up having to go ask for help through a hospital emergency room for mental health because I had nowhere else to go. You can go to a walk-in clinic, but they only let you raise one issue at a time. And if you're a complex case and you've got a lot going on, like I didn't even know what I would say to them. So I kind of just tried to cope on my own until I couldn't function. And then I had a pretty horrible experience my first time asking for help. Like navigating that emergency mental health care system is very challenging. So based on that experience, I created a notebook basically just to help people prepare in advance, especially like neurodivergent people like to be prepared, right?
Yeah.
So it put examples of questions like you may want to jot notes down about so that you don't have to rely on your memory, which is a big thing too. For my ADHD, my memory can be impaired, especially my working memory, especially under stress. So it just has a lot of prompts to help you prepare yourself so that you can actually advocate for help. Because when I went, I wasn't expecting them to look at me and be like, so what do you want? Like, I don't know. I am here. I'm asking you. I'm just here. Like, I'm desperate for help. I don't know. And obviously the doctors in the emergency room have a lot going on. And if you don't push for your own care and push for your own needs, you may end up in sort of a line of care that is not exactly what you wanted. And it can be hard when you can't even communicate what those needs are. So that notebook is just to help people prepare to ask for help. And it doesn't have to be emergency help. It could be something you prepare and take to a doctor if you have one. And the other notebooks I create are a little bit more lighthearted and fun, ADHD friendly notebooks, which is essentially just a notebook that encourages you to embrace stimming. So there's doodle designs, there's coloring pages. And again, like when I'm really thinking hard or really paying attention to the outside world, sometimes that looks like me doodling and not making eye contact, right? So it's just a notebook to kind of embrace that everyone thinks and works a little differently, and some of us need breaks to color and think while we doodle, and that's really all that's about. And each of my notebooks, I donate $1 from each sale back to mental health services at PRHC, which is where I started to get help, and then that started the process of my diagnosis there. So that's why I do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Was that because of your marketing background or brain?
I thought, like I spent all this money on university and college, and I do have, that was a hard thing too. Like when I hit burnout and started really having a hard time, it felt like, okay, but like, does the decades of other stuff not matter anymore? Like it feels like, I don't know if you've experienced this in your life, or I'm sure a lot of people have. It's like, I was a perfectionist and trying to be perfect and failing, of course, but I was doing my best, to hide all my struggles and do what I could. And then that fell apart. And it felt like second I had a hard time, like people are quick to kind of write you off, like, oh, you're crazy. Especially for women. I feel like crazy is like the word, right? Yeah. No, I was emotional. And not handling my emotions well. I was very, emotionally dysregulated and over explaining myself because I'm so used to being misunderstood that I want to be understood. So I would give like way more context than needed. And it made me sound crazy, Sure. Or look crazy, or you're not healthy. You're not coping healthy. And that looks crazy sometimes to some people, and that you get labeled as that.
Even emotional needs to be a better word for that.
Yeah.
Because we are all emotional. And we should all be emotional.
And anger is emotion too, right?
And that's normal and it's fine. But we were told we can't be angry. We can't have feelings or anger.
Yeah, and especially for men's mental health too, like the repression that goes on there.
I've heard sort of like men are not allowed to be angry.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other conversation, and there's some stuff I don't want to talk about with it. But and it's challenging.
It is, and I guess I kind of went off on a tangent, but I felt like I got sick. Now I have no value because I couldn't work, and I just really wanted to do something. Like I can do something, you know, maybe I can't work full time right now, but I can create something on my own terms when I have the capacity to do it. And maybe this would be some kind of way I could earn a little bit of money for my son and I, and still give back and help other people that are struggling with the same thing. And so I just didn't want to feel like everything I went through was for nothing.
But you're there for your son though too, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
That's what you're there
But
for.
like, I want him to be proud of his mom, you know, like I want him to see his mom thriving, and I want to be an example for him. And to do that, I have to be that. So if I want him to love and accept who he is authentically, then I have to figure out how to do that for myself, which is hard to learn as an adult, right?
Yes,
It's much easier if you have the healthy self-esteem from a child, you know, from childhood. So that's what we're working on.
How old is he?
He's 3. So we're good, but he's amazing and so smart, and just like my motivation for everything.
How often do you talk about what you're going through with your ADHD and the autism?
I've done a couple like podcast things. I'm more comfortable posting online.
I mean, so I meant with him.
Oh, with him?
Yeah.
Not ever yet.
Okay.
But we do it in sort of indirect ways. So things like, he can be emotional too. Of course, every toddler can. And so just reinforcing, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad.
Awesome. Yeah.
It's okay to make mistakes, you know, just I try to be like, instill that positive voice in his head. So I'm like over the top ever since he was a kid too. If you would have been with us, like when I was on mat leave, I sounded insane because I would narrate everything I was doing, everything, like talk to him all day long, because I just wanted him to know how awesome he was. And like, I just building up his self-esteem as much as I can, so that when he goes out in the world, he'll be resilient, you know, because the world's hard for everybody. And so I think home should be a safe space, and I want to always be that for him.
That's awesome. What else are you doing now? So when I first became aware of you, it was because you were doing marketing.
Yes.
On your own too.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I ever told you this, and maybe I shouldn't say it, but when I first started my business, my marketing business, like 7 years ago, I started like looking around, like who else is doing marketing. And you're the only other person that scared me.
Oh,
I was like,
that's a compliment.
Like, this woman gets it. And you were the only one. Sorry for everybody else. But I remember being like,
guys.
when I was looking, I was like, oh, she gets it.
Oh,
and
thank you.
she's like legitimate competition. And I was scared. And then like, I don't know you until today. And I became aware of you a couple of years ago. I remember I was like, I'm going to reach out to her, like, just connect. And then you just kind of disappeared.
I did.
Like, now I know your backstory, and then I saw that you had a kid. I'm like, that's why she disappeared.
Yeah.
Great.
So I always worked in municipal government most of my career, and always with some kind of marketing aspect to the role. And then I worked actually, as a communications officer for a while. I moved to more of like executive assistant work, honestly, because it paid more.
Yeah.
Like that's the real answer. And then I still, typical ADHD fashion, like one job wasn't enough because I have a hard time resting.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do the marketing and communication stuff a bit on the side still. But super funny that in the municipal world, there's kind of like one main communication consulting company that's like, the company, like they're the coolest. They do like most of the training for all the municipalities around. Like I really was like a super fan of them.
Nice.
I had done their media training a bunch of times and like got all those skills. After mat leave, left mat leave early because I felt like I needed money. I had got a job at that company pretty much solely based on my media skills. So we would do media interview training, and I was very, very good at it.
Sure.
And got that job. And then I couldn't do it. And that was horrible. That was like the first fall off of when my mental health was really, really declining.
Why couldn't you do it? You said the skills
regression? My skill regression.
Okay.
I could not focus. I could not sit still. I was so emotional. Like it's hard to work when you're crying 6 hours a day, like I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. And I was going through the process of getting diagnosed at the same time as that job. So I just was exhausted. I don't know how to describe burnout other than like, I feel like my brain broke. Like my memory was horrific. The memory was like one of the scariest parts. Couldn't get myself to open a computer, like couldn't make myself do it. So like the task initiation thing and that like forget what they call it, the ADHD paralysis, I guess they call it, but like I just could not make myself do anything other than get out of bed and keep my son alive. Like that was all I had the capacity for. I could barely cook. I would struggle to leave the house. And they had hired me based on full capacity pre-baby Ashley. And that is not what they got, you know? And that was something that I found horrible because I was so embarrassed. I looked up to these people and then I felt like I disappointed them. But and they were very kind about it. Like they were wonderful about it. But you know, it's just one of those things where like I felt so confident in those skills and then it fell off. And I've been hesitant. Like that is one thing I still struggle with is like my confidence and my ability to work. It's just shaky, or my confidence in my intelligence and stuff has been rough since I got sick.
I have 1,000 more questions for you. I'm not going to ask you 1,000 more questions.
Okay.
But one thing I definitely wanted to ask you was when you have these hyper fixations.
Yes.
And you're all consumed by marketing, and then you're all consumed by personal training and these
gardening was another one.
Yeah. When they go away, are you grieving that?
Oh yeah. Like, so when I went through my separation, I couldn't have my garden anymore because I left the house, and I like won't go into a plant store. Like I find that still like hard because that was like a special interest of mine. And you know, with autism, like your special interest is very like important to you, right? And it's like distressing when you can't do it, or you get stressed when you don't have the ability to do it. And I think for me, when I'm going through stress, I tend to escape into that special interest. Like if I can give the best example I've seen of what it felt like for me was like, if you've watched Parks and Rec, like the Ben Wyatt crash out after he gets fired and he just starts making these like clay figurines obsessively, or like Sheldon Cooper when he goes through something and he starts like working on his loom like consistently as his coping, like that's what gardening was for me. Like I felt like I couldn't deal with life and that was just all I could do. And then it was highly distressing when I couldn't do it. And I do feel grief over it.
Do you feel like you can do it again? Or when you've lost interest in your special interest, your brain is just done with it?
I think I'm hoping it'll come back, but I think I'll have to be like secure that I'm in a place where no one will ever be able to take it from me, if that makes sense. Like it wouldn't be like living in someone else's house. I would have to have my own house that I owned, and you know, because I would be scared to get back into it and then like lose it again, kind of thing. So right now I'm avoiding it, but I'm hoping it might come back because it did bring me a lot of joy, and it did, again, like gardening's activity too. If you don't like exercise, you're walking around, you're lifting things. It kept me physically busy and distracted my mind, almost like a meditative type of thing.
Yeah.
So it would be nice to get back to that one day. I hope so, but I don't know yet.
That sounds like grief.
Yeah.
It sounds like you don't want it to be gone and you hope it's going to come back.
I hope so. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Last question.
Okay.
And I always fumble this. I'll get there eventually. If there's one thing you wanted people to know about autism, what would it be?
Just that autistic people are just people. Like, I think what we talked about before, for just being more understanding, and that not everyone experiences the world the same way that you do. So just because bright overhead lights don't send you into a spiral and cause you distress, that doesn't mean it's not valid for someone else. Like, I wish people could just be in general more accepting of each other and give each other a little bit more grace. And I feel like that would be, for me as an undiagnosed autistic person growing up, I feel like that would have went a long way, instead of saying I was weird or annoying. You know, you don't have to be obsessed with Sailor Moon like I was, but you could say, it's great that you love that. I see it makes you happy. That's cool. You don't have to like it, you know, but you can still not judge someone just because they're a little different than you. So I hope that if people get one thing out of the podcast from me being here, that I hope that's what they take.